one of the things I used to love to do would be go to the department store shopping. And let's say I found a shirt I really wanted. And oftentimes it was more than I really wanted to pay because I have expensive taste, right? And so I would take the item over to the clerk and I could tell, she's having a dull day or a difficult day. And I would say something like, rough day. And she go like, no. I go, oh, just another day. And she go, yeah. That created a connection. And then I'd hold the price tag and I'd say, is this the best price on this item?
There's no way I could do that. The price is the price.
Well, it depends how you look at it. See, I look at the price as a suggestion. Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast.
That's completely opposite to me. To me, a price is this is the deal, either take it or leave it. And I mean, maybe that's a bigger struggle I have of mine where I don't negotiate deals well. And it's just kind of, I see what you offer and I'm either going to take it or leave it. Can I learn to maybe see prices as suggestions?
I absolutely believe you can. In fact, I'd like to tell a story of a business deal I did that really illustrates what I think are three basic keys to making a great deal. I was contacted by this banker. This is so interesting. And he said, I have this deal. These guys pitched a deal to me. And I think there's a deal here, but I can't make heads or tails out of this thing. I would like to suggest you to go interact with these guys and see what you can come up with. I said, sure. So I met with them. They brought me in onto their leadership team. And because they had no financial person involved whatsoever, these were engineers, and they were trying to purchase two manufacturing lines, two production lines in this manufacturing business. And it was a subset of a global company, huge company.
And not to talk down on engineers here, but when you said that to me and they're trying to negotiate this deal, I think, oh, these engineers are probably just fascinated by the chance that they have with whatever these production lines are, these products. Like they're just fascinated by the opportunity to do that. And they're not going to focus on the nuts and bolts of the deal on how that production turns into profit.
Exactly. They're really, really good with the production numbers. And so I looked at their projections and financial stuff that they'd put together, and I could see why the banker was completely confused. They didn't pitch the deal very well from a financial standpoint. And there was lots of great opportunity in this deal. The banker's instincts were dead on, and these guys had a great opportunity in front of them. But how do you get that opportunity?
So is that the first key?
Yes, the first key is staking out your position in relation to their position. So you've got to know your strengths, you got to know your weaknesses, and you got to anticipate what the other side is. So let me talk about the players for just a second, because it's really fascinating. It's Big Globo Corp in another city. They're going to send in these guys in suits and computers and talk wonky financial stuff to the owner and his key partner, who are engineers. And the owner has operated this manufacturing business for years, so he knows the whole operational side. We don't have a clue what the financials actually end up looking like at world headquarters.
Got it. So your negotiating position is we know everything about this business besides how much money it makes.
Correct. Yeah. So we don't know. And that's what was confusing the banker. Is this a good deal or a bad deal? He couldn't tell. And this was going to be an asset purchase. And so, they're flying in all these appraisers and all these people. You got to know the mentality. All right. So my two guys are really intimidated by the suits, by the big Globo Corp, all this stuff, and particularly the financial stuff. So they are just like you, AJ. They go to the department store. The price is the price. Boom. And so I
And
go
then
into
especially when this department store, it's six guys or how many ever guys in suits coming, and then they're going to tell you the price rather than seeing the little sign.
Yeah. And here's the problem. If you go into the negotiation with the price is the price, you're going to have a closing, not a negotiation. I looked at the appraised value by the appraisers as a suggestion. And they're going, how can you look at this as a suggestion? This is what the appraisers have said this is worth. I said, yeah, that's their opinion. I have a different opinion. And I didn't go with, is this your best price line? I'm going to throw a number on the table. So what I did was I had to model like different purchase prices into the scenario so we could go, what does the production look like? And what do we think the potential profits are on this? And so it was very complicated projections. This is staking out your position. You've got to know, because once the negotiation starts, once the conversations begin, you've got to be pop, 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 real quick with your thoughts and know where you're going. You've got to work your chess moves out in advance.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's like chess is like you have to be thinking. You're moving fast, but you have to be thinking ahead. But I know the good ones, they study well before, they look at previous games, and they study all of that, and they kind of, it's like situation planning. So they know all the situations they can go into based on each move that they make, and that's exactly what you have to do when you're negotiating.
Yeah, I would make one clarification there. It's I'm not trying to guess their moves. I want to know my moves.
Yeah,
So
and
so it,
then
because I'm going to come in here, and what is my range and where am I headed?
and are not just get are I know you're not going to guess their moves, but are you at least trying to anticipate, okay, if I make this move, they have options A, B, and C?
Okay, look, I know. Let's go back to the department store because that's a pretty simple thing. I know there's a 50-50 chance the response I'm going to get. That's the price is one response. Yeah, I could come down. They may even say, well, what were you thinking? I better be ready with a price.
Hmm.
So, it's either going to be no or yes. And if it's yes, they may say, well, we could do $5 off, or we could do, or what were you thinking? And throw it over to me. Now, the problem with that is, do I leave? I go, $5 was what I was thinking. If you could take $5 off the price. And they go, oh, we could do that super easy. I'm like, money on the table. I could
Exactly.
have said 8, you know? So here's the thing so I know I'm going to come in with a price that's going to be shocking. Apple Computer just did this with their VR headset. The
With the
market is
4,000 price.
expecting the market's expecting somewhere between $300 to $500, maybe 1,000. They come in at $3,500, and the reason is they want to make a profit on the first headset they sell. They're not doing it the way Meta's doing it. This is the same game. So you've got to stake out your position. So here's the thing. When you get into the conversation, you don't key number 2, you don't want to negotiate against yourself.
Got it. I know I've definitely fallen victim to that before.
Right. So what did that look like?
They had their offer. I
Right.
said no. I gave my offer. They said no, but they said no without a counter.
Right.
And so I just I countered myself basically in order to try to, you know, to make an agreement. But obviously that's not the right way to approach it.
Right. So in the in that you've got to know your position and know where you're going, and so it's not, you've got it mapped out. I knew my numbers, and I had a strategy, and my strategy was, they're Goliath, I'm David, an old Bible story. And David has 3 rocks. Goliath is the big giant everyone's scared of. This is exactly the same thing. And my 2 little guys are frightened to death of big Goliath, Globocorp, and they've got 3 rocks. And it's the owner, his partner, and me. And I'm the first rock, and they're going to throw me at them and see what happens. Okay. Here's what Globocorp doesn't know: how to run a small business. And that was my guess, that I could use small business arguments and go, oh, we'd love to pay that price, but there's no way we can make money at that price because we don't have what you have.
And did you come to that conclusion as you were kind of staking out your position, thinking of your strengths and weaknesses and their strengths and
Yeah,
weaknesses.
I've
Like you figured, okay, they're going to send some of their heavy hitters, and so for them to get in that position in this big company, they've probably had to be there for quite a while. So they haven't seen a startup in maybe their whole careers.
oh, these guys, these are the suits. These are the suits. These are salary guys. They have no concept of free market incentives and things like that. They just want to get a good performance review and a bonus or a raise.
Yeah.
That's their world. And the deal is they got to sell this thing. Let's just say, for illustration purposes, the appraised value is $3.5 million on the assets. I want to come in at like $700,000. I want to come in shockingly low. All
But
right.
with that shock, don't you run the risk of them being like, okay, George is ridiculous. We're not going to get
Not if I
anywhere with
set
him.
up the argument right. And I have to empathize their position. Guys, I totally get it. But here's what you haven't factored in. That could be the asset value. So I didn't challenge it head on. I just made suggestions. I didn't think it was that's a pretty high asset value on these assets because we know the usage of these things and things like that. I didn't want to get into a tit for tat on the asset. What I wanted to do was say, look, you've got huge infrastructure back at world headquarters, okay, that we don't have, that we have to go create and buy. That cost is not factored into us running the business. If we pay that asset value, there we won't ever make money. And they go, well, but you're going to get these lucrative contracts. I go, the lucrative contracts are not lucrative if I don't, they're lucrative if I've got huge overhead that's covered by the other billions of dollars of revenue in your organization.
And that's got to stroke their ego a little bit too, because they're like, oh yeah, we've got all the resources. Our company's doing things the right way. Like,
right. And I go, I've done some modeling on this because I've got to then take your overhead costs that are over here in World HQ and bring them into my cost. And I've modeled this stuff out. So part of my tactic was I'm going to show you my numbers.
I'm guessing you probably over exaggerated a little bit on how much those costs were going to be and just banking on them not really knowing that.
Well, they knew certain numbers, like they knew the contracts that were there. And so we were going to get these existing contracts but they were 3 years. I mean, what happens after 3 years? And I brought that up too, by the way. I go like, yeah, this gets us a good chance to start. It's very, very helpful. And we would actually, this is a fascinating thing, we would actually be supplying Globocorp.
Ah.
It was all part of the deal. And
Mm-hmm.
so these negotiations were really tricky because I'm negotiating with our future customer.
to buy their oh man, that
Right.
does get a little complex.
Right. So let's go to the third key. You've got to be ready to close the deal when you're in the range of your deal. Okay.
When you're
Uh,
in what you already prepared as, okay, these are favorable terms for me, or these are terms that I like.
right. And the other thing is you've got to be ready to just, sorry, we can't do that. I rolled all that into the beginning of the conversation and said, I'm talking very empathetically to them. So I'm understanding their position. And then I want them to understand my position because now we're going to have a conversation, not a negotiation. That's a huge dynamic shift in the whole process.
Yeah. So just going back a little bit, when you counter with that shock offer, you need to counter in a way that's a conversation rather than, well, I want 700,000. And then
Right.
like where it's just a staring contest at that point to see who blinks first. And ultimately, if you do get into that competition where it's who blinks first, you have to be willing to walk away because the deal isn't within favorable terms for you.
Right. And we had a lot of inside intel. The owner was brilliant in networking all around the company, the Globo company. And we pretty much knew their position was they needed to come back with some kind of deal.
Yeah.
I thought then let's go low. We got to find the floor.
So they couldn't follow key three because they weren't prepared to walk away.
They could not walk away. I mean, well, they could walk away, but
They'd be walking into
but
an angry office with an angry
well,
boss and less bonus and
well, I don't know
lower
about
performance
that. I don't
review.
know about that. But the problem is they're going to be stuck with this equipment that then they're just going to have to sell piecemeal or something like at an auction or something. What I was doing was finding their floor. Okay. So in other words, I wanted to get as low as I could because my hunch was they had to leave with some kind of deal. And if they didn't, then the price, if they sold it at auction, you know, they might get 700,000 for it, you know, or maybe
Yeah.
a million or something. So I've got to get it way below that price. And I wanted to find out where they were. I was fully expecting if I presented well, then, and they understood my problem, then they start looking at my numbers and, like they said this, here's a real key tip, guys. They go, oh, well, could we have your spreadsheets and look them over tonight at the hotel? I'm like, no. I'll show them to you here and turn my screen around and see what I'm looking at. I wasn't about to give them my spreadsheets. That just wasn't. So you've got to be cunning in all of this. And so but if the way I presented it was, this is my problem. I'd love to, I mean, it'd be great if we could do 3.5 million, but I don't have I have zero infrastructure. I'm starting a startup company. We're going to be spending on top of this money, we're going to be spending this amount of money in, like, let's say $1 million to build up our infrastructure. We've got to get startup capital, blah, 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 blah. And we've got to finance this whole deal. So I'm putting together a deal with the bank. So I've actually got two negotiations going on here. I've got the negotiation with Globo and I got the negotiation with my banker friend. And so I want them to feel my pain and they want us and they're for us, right? So I had that advantage, but I had staked out that position. And that's why staking out the position is so key.
And how do you know when you find their floor?
They counter, they squeal. There's some kind of reaction like, oh, well, and they start pushing back from the table a little bit, you know. It's like, yeah, you know, there's not a snowball's chance we're gonna do that price ever, you know. You're like, well, okay. I'm just starting off with what would work. So what would work for you? You know, so they got to come down a lot. Here's what I want the game to be. I want them to come down a lot. I want to come up a little.
Got it.
And so the Goliath and David thing is, I felt like I'm in this little guy running around the giant's legs and he can't keep up with me. And that's exactly what happened. He couldn't keep up with my small business arguments.
Oh man. After hearing all of this, I'm realizing I've broken all of these keys.
Well, the good news is you're young at this, and there's always going to be another deal to make. Here's the thing. So let's kind of, you want to stake out your position. Don't ever counter your own offer. Don't negotiate against yourself. And if it's just be quiet, keep your mouth shut. And it is so hard. It is so hard. The second you counter, you show weakness. They realize they smell blood. The sharks smell blood in the water. They start circling. Oh, they actually counted their own counter.
Oh, and then because you never showed that weakness, they started to feel like, oh, we have to start giving if we want to go home with this deal done.
Yeah, and actually, as I'm telling this, I'm remembering a couple of the other very important details. We would also negotiate the going forward deal. So it's buy the company or buy the production lines, and then negotiate what's the going forward contract look like. So when we got stuck in one part, we'd start talking about the other.
Oh,
And
okay.
And so what they wanted was us to take, see, this was an expense line on their portfolio. It was not an income producing production line. It was a loss line. And I suspected that, and that comes out in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to remove, so it's all good for you. There's no downside to these guys. So when you looked at the full deal, yeah, we got a really good price. We got a really good price. And they got a really good deal because the loss of that, now we took over that whole operation. We even negotiated into the deal. We took over their lease, which was huge. So they, that meant they didn't have to keep paying anything. And then they would just buy product when they needed it. And we worked the deal out on that. So we had a guarantee, but not a big guarantee and all these kinds of things. And this was low-tech manufacturing items that would go into like supersonic aircraft or helicopters and things like that. And so this was a win for them. The guys go home. You got to figure out what's a win for them. Well, they removed an expense line from the company, and they had a good purchasing agreement going forward.
And you get the number you want to run a profitable business.
The owner had to put in, this is long enough ago where it doesn't matter anymore. To make the deal swing with the bank, he had to put in $400,000. It was highly leveraged. I think it was a several $1,000,000 deal on the borrowing side.
Mm-hmm.
We cash flowed so strong in the first 3 to 6 months, we paid back his $400,000.
Oh, wow. So that was
the price was ridiculously good. We made so much money in the first 3 years.
So that was a very successful deal.
It was
now
a very successful deal.
I have a question taking us back to kind of the start.
All right.
How did it go with the item with the clerk?
Oh, yeah. So, she liked me. She said, sure. Yeah, I can take some off of that.
Does that still work?
I don't know. Because I don't go to department stores anymore. I go to Costco, and I go, and so I like their prices, and I've never tried to negotiate with them. So on a deal, you need to know what's a good deal for you. And when you get it, close it, accept it. Like the clerk, I got a price, I got something off, I was happy. I definitely had a range, and it was in the range. I took it, bought the shirt. I'm happy, she's happy. Same thing with this production line deal. When you got the price, we closed it. We were like, they liked it, we liked it, it was good, boom, close it. And we did tiny closes along the way. That's another strategy in closing it out, so that, like we could all come to agreement. Okay, we'll buy these assets for this price. Now, we hadn't put any money down or anything like that. We could walk away from it at any time, but we had a verbal agreement going for, okay, we got this done, and then we had them all done, and we were done. So we're going to keep talking about this next week with more insights on how to make a great deal. And until then, enjoy this video right here, and may you live truly free.